So, welcome one and all to this RH Rigging series of tutorials on rigging in Lightwave. In this series we're going to take you through the complete picture of rigging in Lightwave for setting up your own systems, whether that's for characters or mechanical objects, vehicles and so on, giving you all of the detailed knowledge to be able to pick your way through on a project by project basis to produce the kind of rigs and setups that you will need. The first part of the training that we'll get to very shortly is all of the foundational knowledge that you're going to need to know before we go any further, which will give you a detailed overview of the Lightwave environment, how things are handled, so that you will later be able to understand the tools, what they do, and why they need to operate in a certain way. Before we start on all that, however, I just want to give you a quick introduction to some need-to-knows so that we can all be following along properly on the same page as we move forward. First of all, this tutorial does assume that you have a basic working knowledge of Lightwave already. If you do not, and you really are completely fresh to the program, then pop on over here to lightwave3d.com and in the Learning section, make sure that you watch at the very least the Lightwave Layout Interface Beginner tutorial and the Lightwave Modeler Interface Beginning tutorial to familiarize yourself with the interfaces of the two applications. You will probably also find it helpful to grab yourself the supplied menus for this tutorial. We have two. The rigging menu, which has all of the tools and switches and so forth that we'll be using throughout, and also the animate menu, which will be popping up from time to time. These are easily added to your existing menus, whichever layout you choose to use. Simply go into your configure menus, go to the main menu option, right click and import branch, and import the two CFG files. And you'll then be able to drag the menus to whichever position in the toolbar you wish. I also want to make a couple of additional notes on some of the tools that are listed here. First of all, the Enable MC, IK and Deform switches that we have here. MC is short for motion controllers and applies to basically all of the mainline controllers that appear in the motion options panel. Don't worry if you're unfamiliar with it, we will see it later. Whereas IK refers to inverse kinematic setups. Deforms, meanwhile, refers to actual mesh deformations. You must be aware of these because if you've got a rig set up and one of them is toggled off, your rig clearly won't work. And if you're not used to using these switches, then you might be fumbling around a little trying to find out why. Let me also point out Auto Key down here. An awful lot of folks traditionally have liked working in Lightwave with Auto Key off, and they simply create keyframes as and when they want them. Many of the motion controllers in Lightwave do not work with Auto Key off. They will not evaluate. So make sure for the duration of these tutorials that you are working with Auto Key on. Lastly, there are some tools in these menus which come from plugins. For instance, we have this Store, Assign and Clear set of 3 listed here. These are part of an Assign Tools pack set of scripts that came from NewTek. You can look that up on the NewTek board here simply by searching Assign Tools. You'll also notice that in the Genoma section here we have Item Shape, Motion and Renamer. These can be gotten from the sticky thread here, Genoma Updates and Related Plugins. Lastly, you'll see that there are some RH tools in these menus, and these, along with the menu CFG files themselves, can be downloaded from my own website in the Shares section. Lastly, be aware of the different basic editors that we'll be using. The classic scene editor, as it is often called, also known just as scene editor, is what we'll be using for most of the tutorial, though some of you may prefer to use the new version scene editor, which you may note I call the spreadsheet simply because that's the tool that it came out of and it's more similar to spreadsheet tools that are found in other applications. Either way, they do much the same sort of thing as regards our needs in these tutorials, but generally we will be using the classic scene editor just for convenience and ease of view with what's going on. One last note I'll make is a bit of a glossary definition. You will hear me throughout these tutorials refer to items when we're setting things up. When it comes to rigging in Lightwave, all items are equal. It doesn't matter whether you've got a light or a camera or a null or a bone or a mesh, they can all be set up using the same tools in the same ways, and they all obey the same laws, essentially. This means you can have an IK chain made of cameras with a light being a goal or whatever else. And there we go. With those little bits of housekeeping out the way, we are pretty much ready to proceed. So, I very much hope that you will like this training series and you'll get a lot out of it. And with that, we shall now crack on.